I will be conducting an air brake and in-cab inspection in a commercial vehicle. I will first start off by getting my chalk out of my vehicle. We have our chalk located in the middle floor portion of our cab. You will grab yours wherever yours may be located. I will place my chalk in the front part of my tractor tire. Once I've secured my chalk, I will then enter my vehicle. I will use 3 points on contact to get inside. Now that I've safely entered my vehicle, I will first start off by putting my seatbelt on. Then I will continue with a safe start. First, making sure both my spring brakes are applied. I will grab my key and put it into the on position, making sure my ABS light flashes on and off on my dashboard. I'll make sure my vehicle is in neutral. Now I can move on to turning my engine on. My first test is the air gauge and governor cutoff. My cutout needs to happen between 120 and 140 psi. I will know my cutoff happened because my needle stopped rising. You can let the pressure build on its own or press your accelerator. Make sure that you do not exceed 1500 RPM. This is how the gauge in the automatic vehicle is read. 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135, 150. My needle stopped rising at 125 psi, which is a good test because it was between 120 and 140 psi. Second test is my air leakage rate test. I shouldn't lose more than 4 psi in 60 seconds. We will first release our tractor spring brake, then our trailer spring brake, and wait for the needles to stabilize. Once your needle has stopped dropping, make sure you build pressure back up to max or no less than 100 psi. I will turn the truck off. I will leave the key on, wait for needles to stabilize once again. I will press and hold my service brake down to the floor. Then I will wait for my needles to stabilize once again. My needle has stabilized. My minute starts now. My minute has ended. It was a good test because I didn't lose any psi and I shouldn't lose more than 3 psi in 60 seconds. My next test is my air warning device test. It's either a light or a buzzer that turns on. In this vehicle it is both and it should turn on no less than 55 psi. Keeping an eye on my gauge every time I release air. I press the brake and wait for my needle every single time. Again. I press the brake and wait for my needle every single time. Again. I press the brake and wait for my needle every single time. Again. I press the brake and wait for my needle every single time. Again. I press the brake and wait for my needle every single time. It was a good test because my light and alarm went off no less than 55 psi. My next test is my emergency brake test. My tractor spring brake should pop out between 20 and 45 psi. I will fan my brake once again and stop every single time to check my needle. I will do this until my tractor spring brake pops out. I press the brake and wait for my needle to stabilize. I press the brake and wait for my needle to stabilize. I press the brake and wait for my needle to stabilize. My trailer spring brake has popped out. I will continue until my tractor parking brake pops out. I press the brake and wait for my needle to stabilize. My tractor spring brake popped out. It popped out between 2245 psi, which is a good test. I'll now be building my truck back to max pressure. This is April from InMotion Trucking School. I'll be conducting my in-cab inspection on our automatic vehicle. I'll start off by pressing my city horn, then moving on to pressing my air horn. I will now turn on my headlights and running lights, pressing the button up to turn them on. I'll pull the handle towards me to turn my high beams on. The high beam light will turn on my dash. I'll turn on my left, right, and four-way flasher lights on, and they will also appear on my dash. I'll move on to checking my wipers and fluid, turning it on and checking they work properly, making sure my wipers are not cracked or broken and working properly. I'll make sure my windshield is not cracked, not broken, it's clean and no illegal stickers obstructing my view. I'll move down to my air conditioner, heater, and defroster. I'll turn my AC on, feeling it through the vents. I'll switch to defroster mode and feel through my top vents. I'll turn it over to my heater and wait to feel on my top vents as well. I'll move on to my traffic monitoring devices. My mirrors are not cracked, not broken, and clean, properly mounted with brackets with no illegal stickers obstructing my view. I'll now move on to my emergency equipment. I'll start off with my 3 triangle reflectors located in their box under my passenger side seat. In my glove box I have at least 6 spare fuses. On the left side of my driver's seat I have my fire extinguisher properly mounted and secured to the floor of my cab. It is filled, up to date, and with a pin attached. With this I conclude my in-cab inspection. I'll now be conducting my brake check. I'll be checking my tractor, trailer, and service brake. I'll first be checking my tractor spring brake. I'll press my service brake in so my truck doesn't move. I'll put my truck into drive. I'll slightly accelerate to feel a slight tug. I felt a slight tug. This was a good test because my tractor brake held my truck in place. I'll be testing my trailer spring brake. Pushing my tractor spring brake in. Putting my truck into drive. I will slightly accelerate to feel a tug. Felt a tug. That was a good test because my trailer spring brake kept my vehicle in its place. I will press my service brake and put my truck back into neutral, building my pressure back to max. I will now be checking my service brake. I'll be releasing my tractor brake by pushing it in. Stepping on my service brake, putting my truck into drive, and then letting go of my service brake, I will press the accelerator slightly to move my truck 3 to 5 feet forward. I will then press my service brake to stop my truck, and we should not shift left or right. That was a good test because my service brake stopped my vehicle and we didn't shift left or right. With this, I conclude my air brake and in-cab inspection on a Class B vehicle. Get your commercial license with us, and then you can also say I graduated from InMotion Trucking School.